The Met Office have issued an extreme heat warning for Monday, Tuesday for some parts of the UK. But when we talk about extreme heat, what do we mean? And how extreme will it be? What will be the impacts of that heat? Before I get into that, let's take a look at where the air is coming from, why it's turning hotter. And actually, at first glance, it looks like low pressure is in charge of the weather across the UK right now. That low pressure is sitting close to Iceland. But looking further west, the jet stream, it's becoming weaker, it's becoming a little bit more wavy. Now, the first half of June, the jet stream was actually south shifted. It had a bit of oomph. It was sending us low pressure after low pressure. So this is a stark contrast compared with the first half of the month. But actually, one big factor driving the heat is this low coming out of North America. And although on the face of it, most of the computer models have the same general theme through the next few days in terms of high pressure building, high temperatures arriving, subtle differences in terms of the track and depth of this low will make a big difference in terms of how extreme the temperatures will be early next week, especially Tuesday onwards, how widespread the heat will be across the UK and how long it will last. So it's this low that is crucial in terms of determining the extent, the severity and the duration of this heat. But before the low arrives into the mid-Atlantic, you can see through Saturday, high pressure is building. It's already across central parts of Europe, but it's going to extend north. That means that although Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England have seen a lot of rain this week, it is going to turn drier. These weather fronts are going to be pushed further north. So we've got this drying up trend and this warming up trend across most of the UK. Even if you've had a lot of rain this week, it's going to turn drier, it's going to turn warmer where you are through Saturday and Sunday. Actually, for Scotland, for Northern Ireland, for Northern England, it's a fine weekend. It's a decent weekend, mostly dry, bright, increasingly warm. But the highest temperatures are arriving from the south. It's going to heat up under this large area of high pressure over the near continent, and those temperatures are going to build day by day. And after a fresher Saturday, it's going to turn increasingly hot through Sunday into Monday as that high pressure remains in place. Now, here's the low coming into the mid-Atlantic. This is showing the Met Office model, which is modelling this low as a deeper feature in the mid-Atlantic. That means it kind of slows down and forces more of a high pressure ridge ahead of it and forces higher temperatures across southern parts of the UK and a longer lasting heat wave compared with some other models. So that's the key difference. But most models have the same general setup in terms of high pressure dominating the scene early next week and the heat that is across Central Europe just expanding northwards. Imagine this expanding balloon of heat centred across France, pushing into southern parts of the UK. So it's not that the surface winds across northern France are pushing higher temperatures our way. It's this expanding bubble of heat that actually originates in a surprising location. This graphic here, it's slightly technical, but I'll walk you through it. This shows where the air on Monday is coming from. So that's the location on Monday where the air over London is, and then you just trace these lines back to see where it comes from 5 days earlier. Now, there are lots of lines on this chart coming from all sorts of different places, but the important lines are the blue ones, the darker blue ones, because that's the air at the surface in London on Monday, and it shows where that air comes from. And actually, if you trace it back, it's coming from Iceland a couple of days ago, and right now, as we're 3 or 4 days ahead, it's around, well, just off the west of Scotland. So that's where the air over London on Monday is currently. It came from Iceland, it's moving over Scotland, Northern Ireland, then it ends up at the surface on Monday in London. So what on earth is going on? Well, it's actually sinking quite significantly through the atmosphere. So yes, starts in Iceland, but starts way up 4 or 5 kilometres above the surface. And then over the next few days, as it gets caught up in that really quite large area of high pressure, the high pressure forces it down. It compresses it, just like when we're pumping up our bicycle tyres, that causes the air to heat up. It's called adiabatic warming or compression, and that causes the air to heat up. It causes those exceptionally high temperatures to develop. There are some of these sources of air coming from the south, but that's air higher levels by the time you get to London. And this graphic here shows, so this is Monday, and then this is Sunday. We're going back in time 5-6 days. This graphic shows the height of the different levels of the atmosphere as it reaches London on Monday. So London on Monday, dark blue at the surface, and then these oranges about 1 kilometre up, and then you can trace the height at which they came from. And it's this that is crucial. These darker blues, they start at 4 or 5 kilometres above Iceland, and then over the next few days, it's sinking. So it's sinking air that is causing the exceptional high temperatures, not just for southern parts of the UK, and I know I'm talking a lot about London because that's where some of the highest temperatures are going to be, but I'm going to talk more about other parts of the UK in a moment. Before I do, I want to show you the rest of Europe because, you know, a lot of people, when we issue these extreme heat warnings, they might say, well, people in France or Spain, they'll be laughing at us with our extreme heat warning. That's unlikely because they're too busy issuing their own extreme heat warnings, or in some places called severe high temperature warnings. Most of these coloured areas on the graphic, these are warnings that are currently in force across many parts of the UK for this weekend. Most of these are for high temperatures. We've got high temperature warnings extending from southern Italy through to the Alps into parts of Belgium, the Netherlands, France, Spain. So all these places where you get higher temperatures in June compared with the UK, they've got their own high temperature warning because it's not about the temperature thresholds, it's about the impacts of the heat, and those impacts will vary country to country depending on what they're used to and their infrastructure. Now, across France in particular, temperatures are expected to be 10 to 15 degrees above average for the time of year. So even though June is typically very warm in France, it's well above what we'd normally expect, especially for northern France. I'll show you the temperatures in a moment, but this is some of the text that accompanies their severe high temperature warning. Everyone is in danger, even those in good health. So this is the French Meteorological Office. Danger is greater for elderly people, people suffering from chronic diseases, mental health troubles, and people who regularly take medicine, and so on. So they're taking this seriously. It's an amber or orange extreme heat warning for France, but also for many parts of the UK. Now, this shows by Monday the peak of the temperatures and what we can expect across many parts of Europe. So, yeah, these are not typical temperatures, especially when you look at Paris, 39 degrees, could be 40, could be a touch higher than that. If I just click on the map here to bring up some other temperatures across France, you know, high 30s, low 40s, these are not typical temperatures for France. So actually the heat across France is more exceptional compared with their climate, compared with Spain, compared with North Africa, compared with other parts of the UK. The greatest anomalies are in this area, and it's those anomalies that are pushing into southern parts of the UK, where we're also going to see highly anomalous temperatures, so highly unusual temperatures for the time of year. How high will those temperatures be? Well, let's take a look, first of all, at how they compare with average. This map shows the maximum temperatures over the next few days. Now, already we're seeing temperatures reaching the low 30s on, just going to click here to bring up Friday. Oh, doesn't want to do that, but you can see it laid out in front of you. Friday, low 30s in the east of England. Saturday, it's not quite as warm, but it's still above average widely, apart from western Scotland, closer to average across western parts of the UK. But then Sunday, the heat builds again. Monday, more intense heat is likely to develop. And that heat is potentially going to intensify further into Tuesday. What kinds of temperatures are we talking about? Well, this gives you a flavour of the day-to-day. Into the low 30s in East Anglia and the southeast on Friday, very localised on Friday. Saturday, it's a bit fresher because the rain that we've currently got across northern and western parts of the country moves through overnight. That's a cold front and actually introduces fresher air. So Saturday starts off cloudy. It's not quite as hot. Sunday, the heat builds as that high pressure builds across the UK from northern France. Now, it's got a 30 on the map there. I wouldn't be surprised if we see 31 degrees somewhere across the far south and southeast on Sunday. You'll also notice that for northern England, parts of Wales are into the mid-20s, low 20s further north across Scotland and Northern Ireland, and a much drier and brighter day expected. So, yeah, it's turning warmer in the north, but the highest temperatures in the south. Monday, 31, 32, it's got there on the graphic. Now, our most likely temperature on Monday is 34 Celsius. That's what we reckon is most likely, but plus or minus 2 degrees. So anywhere from 32 up to 36 Celsius. And that's due to those uncertainties I mentioned before in terms of how amplified the jet stream becomes, how deep that low that's approaching becomes, so how much more of the heat is forced north across southern parts of the UK. Is it going to be record-breaking on Monday? There's a 30% chance that the England record will be broken for June and a 30% chance the Wales record will be broken for June. Those records stand at 35.6 Celsius for England and the UK and 33.7 Celsius for Wales. There's a 30% chance that either of those records could be broken on Monday. It then turns even hotter on Tuesday. Tuesday's temperatures become increasingly uncertain, actually. And to illustrate that, I've got a graphic that shows the trend in the temperatures through the next few days. This is a new graphic that I'm showing you here, so it's certainly worth the wait. And it shows the temperature trend, not from one model, but from 51 models. This is the European model and the most likely temperature from that model, but also some of the extremes. Now, the middle line is the mean, so that's the average from the European model, and then the outer bounds of this kind of white shading, that represents the 95th percentile on top and the 5th percentile on the bottom. So if you order the temperatures for each hour from the European model, 51 computer model runs, and you take the hottest 5%, that's what the top line's showing, and then the coolest 5%. But if none of that makes sense to you, suffice to say that this is the temperature trend for wherever I click on the map, and it shows not only the most likely temperature, but the range of temperatures. And what you can see is that these lines are close together through the weekend, so there's not much range. But by Monday, and more especially into Tuesday, you look at the highest temperature on Tuesday, it's showing, and this is just outside London, Tuesday up to 34, 35 Celsius on top, and then high 20s further down, but most likely low to mid 30s. This is Tuesday. And if I move that dot around the map, you can see it's a similar situation across many parts of east and southeast England. Oh, I just saw quite an extreme one there. So that's London itself, the top one showing 36 Celsius. So that's for Tuesday. There is the risk that temperatures will be even higher on Tuesday. But the error bars are higher. So we're talking about a maximum, most likely temperature of 34 Celsius in the southeast on Tuesday, with the potential for 37 Celsius. That's the southeast. Let's go to the southwest, where actually Monday looks particularly hot because we've got a bit of an easterly breeze, which will bring a cooler feel for East Anglia, but a hotter feel for the southwest of England. However, you can see, although there's reasonable confidence for a hot day on Monday, these get very big indeed from Tuesday onwards. Now, moving it further north into Wales, and you can see similar uncertainties from the middle of next week. Even more so by the time you get to northern England, really quite a large spread Tuesday onwards. Look at that range of possible temperatures for Wednesday onwards, and that is down to the fact that we've got the low in the mid-Atlantic, which is likely to come in and approach the UK, but how it affects northern parts of the UK, whether it brings cloud and showery rain from the middle of the week, or whether it forces the high pressure to the south to build even further and bring higher temperatures across the whole of the UK, that is the main source of uncertainty. So Monday, Tuesday, at the moment looking at the peak of the heat, mid-30s. However, Still some uncertainty remaining in terms of the exact values of those high temperatures, whether we'll beat the June record, which is a 30% chance on Monday, 40% chance on Tuesday, and whether the heat continues from Wednesday onwards or whether we see something a little fresher. Either way, much of next week is looking mostly settled with high pressure close by. And some of the computer models are suggesting a return to the heat later next week if it does turn fresher for a while. Other computer models are suggesting different things entirely. So yeah, next few days looking like the heat really intensifies into early next week. And that is why the Met Office have issued an extreme heat warning. Here it is for this area here across the south of the UK, South Wales included. And it's going to be very humid along with those high temperatures. We're going to see very warm nights. These are the factors that we consider as well as the absolute maximum temperatures expected early next week. And in many ways, the humidity is more important than the absolute temperatures. This shows the humidity on Monday. Appreciate it might be hard to see the outline of the UK, but what's important is to focus on the south of England and parts of Wales where dew point temperatures, that's what this is showing, are above 20 Celsius, and that's going to make it feel really quite oppressive, making it difficult to cool down during the day and be cool at night. So overnight temperatures in the low 20s in places. This hot spell coming up is going to be more humid compared with the hot spell in May, so it's likely to result in more impacts because of that increase in humidity, even if temperatures are similar, and more impacts to infrastructure, roads, railways, bridges, and so on. We saw that kind of thing in May, could see it again this time, but also dangerous conditions for vulnerable people, not just vulnerable people, you know. It's difficult for a lot of us to cool down in this kind of heat when we've got homes that are built to keep heat in rather than to let it out. So keep your homes cool, keep curtains closed during the middle part of the day, stay out of the sun in the middle of the part of the day. If you suffer from this kind of heat, the sun is at its strongest for the time of year, of course, with the solstice this weekend. Stay hydrated, slap on sunscreen, all that advice worth emphasising given how unusual this hot spell is that is coming up. And one final thing to ram home is please stay safe around water. Of course, we saw so many tragic stories back in May, and inland bodies of water, the sea still relatively chilly despite how hot it is outside. So some sensible advice is not to just jump straight into random bodies of water, not to do that sort of thing on your own. Wear bright colours so that people can see you clearly when you're in the water, and make sure that you are sensible, basically, when it comes to swimming and cooling off in this kind of heat.